Hello, hello. Photoshop uses different types of layers for different purposes. In this lecture, we'll discuss each of them so you can better understand what's best for your projects. The first layer type we'll discuss is the shape layer. This is the red rectangle on our canvas, and we can recognize it's a shape layer by looking at its thumbnail. I'll zoom so you can see it better. Okay, that's how you can identify its type, through this symbol. Whenever you see it, you're dealing with a shape layer. To create them, you have all these tools in your left panel: the rectangle tools, the ellipse, line, and custom shapes. Besides these, you can also create shapes through the pen tool, which we'll discuss in a later lecture. The biggest advantage of this layer type is its vector properties. That means you can enlarge it to literally any size, and it won't lose quality. I'll hit Ctrl-T to transform it, and I'll make it as big as my canvas. As you can see, it's still sharp, and that's because it's a vector. These types of layers are frequently used in web design and mobile app projects. They also help in various other scenarios, but that's where they really shine. They do have one drawback: they don't allow complete editing. Sure, I can change its size, shape, or color. By the way, for the last part, you can double-click its thumbnail and you can immediately see the change on the canvas as you move around this window. But I can't erase any part of it with the eraser tool. I also can't paint it with a brush, I can't use filters, and all sorts of other tools and features Photoshop offers at my disposal. Those vector properties come at a price. Let me get my brush tool so I can illustrate my point. You see I have this shape layer selected in my Layers panel. Once I move my mouse cursor over my canvas, it immediately changes into a forbidden sign. That's because this layer type doesn't allow this sort of editing. If I click anywhere, I'll get this message that says I need to rasterize it before I can paint over it. In case I hit OK, you'll see I can paint over it, but I've just lost its vector properties. If I try to enlarge it, look what happens. Let me zoom in so you can see it better. Its edges are now fuzzy. Let me go back a few steps so we'll have it back as a shape layer. So think about what you want to achieve before you use shape layers in your project. Just so this doesn't set you back, here's how you can rasterize any shape layer. You right-click it in the Layers panel, and from this list you can choose Rasterize Layer. And if you check the thumbnail, you'll now see it's lost its shape symbol, so now it's a raster layer. Speaking about that, raster layers are the preferred layer type in Photoshop. This is what you get when you create a new layer from this bottom icon, a raster layer. How do you recognize its type? Well, if you check the Layers panel, you'll see no additional symbol in its thumbnail. It will always be clean. Don't be fooled by this checkered board. If I use the fill command and change its color, you'll now see that's reflected in its thumbnail, but still it has no symbol above it. So what's the deal with them? Well, they give you complete freedom. They gladly accept all edits. That means it's a versatile layer that you can use for all sorts of situations. Let me get my brush tool and I'll repeat the previous test. Yep, here I can paint over it just fine, so it seems like a fantastic choice. The downside is it loses quality when you try to enlarge it. I'd say anything over 20% will give you noticeable fuzzy edges. Here I'll scale it up just a bit and you can already see how it's lost a lot of quality. I'll use Ctrl-Z to go back to our initial state. Please note that all 4 layer types can be rasterized. Let's move over to the next one. Smart objects are represented by this gear icon on the canvas, and you may be wondering, hey, that looks like the raster layer. Yep, they look similar, but that doesn't mean they're the same type. Check the Layers panel and you'll see this has a different thumbnail. This symbol shows you this layer is a smart object. These are special layers that hold on to their information. Photoshop works with pixels. This raster layer has about, say, 12,000 pixels, right? I got that number by multiplying its dimensions. If I make it half that size with the help of Ctrl-T, now it will only have about 6,000 pixels. The rest of them got thrown away. We can't get them back. If we try to enlarge it to its original size, you can see it now looks blurry because Photoshop had to create 6,000 of those pixels that were no longer there. That's how the program deals with raster layers. On the other side, a smart object tells Photoshop you need that information later down the road. So if we shrink it to 50% and then we scale it back to 100%, you'll see it looks fine. That's because Photoshop was told to keep that information. So smart objects sound amazing, right? Actually, they're more than that. Any layer can be transformed into a smart object. Follow me on this. If we right-click the raster layer in the Layers panel, we have the option to convert it to a smart object. You can see that here. Now check the thumbnail and you'll see it's a smart object. That's great, but does this mean Photoshop found those 6,000 pixels it threw away previously? Of course not. The image is still blurry, but it's now been instructed to keep these existing pixels it currently has. So if I now shrink it down all the way to 10%, then resize it back to 100%, you'll see it looks the same as before. We didn't lose any quality through this process. So again, any layer can be transformed into a smart object, and that means Photoshop will hold on to all those pixels it currently has in its memory. Furthermore, smart objects have a special attention from Photoshop's algorithms, so this means that when you enlarge such a layer, you'll get a better result than when you enlarge a raster layer. But here's the catch. Smart objects are not directly editable. Not because Adobe wants to mess with you, but every layer type has its own purpose. If you right-click it and rasterize it, you've just lost all its special properties. On the other hand, now it's a raster layer, so it gladly accepts all edits. It's a big trade-off, but in a few cases it might be worth it. Moving on, the next layer type is a text layer. This is similar to shape layers, where they can be resized to any dimension without losing quality. To make any changes to its appearance, we'll use the Character panel. You can open it by going to Window, Character. From here, you can change just about anything. Font family, weight, size, color, you name it, it's all here. What you can't do is edit it like a raster layer. You could right-click and rasterize it, but this is highly discouraged. The thing is this. Text layers should always remain live. That simply means editable. If you rasterize them, you'll no longer be able to edit its content. Right now it's live, and we can see that by looking at our Layers panel. See this thumbnail? That means it's a text layer. Press T for the Type tool, click it, and you can now perform various edits. When you're done, all you have to do is click anywhere on the canvas. This works in all Photoshop versions above CC 2017. The last layer type is the Adjustment layer. It's not represented on the canvas because it doesn't have any actual pixels. These layers are created from this yin-yang symbol, and their goal is to adjust existing pixels, hence the term adjustment layers. In my Layers panel, I have just such a layer. You can see it has a vastly different thumbnail. If I double-click it, we can see this is an adjustment layer that controls vibrancy and saturation. As I move these sliders up and down, my background layer changes. All the other layers remain untouched because the stacking order is critical. Here, this will affect all layers underneath it in the Layers panel. That's this folder that contains my text layers and the background. This is why all the other ones remain as they are. If I drag it above them, you'll now see the change. Let me move it back. Okay, that about wraps it up. Attached to this lecture, you have a small cheat sheet that summarizes this lecture. In case you forget anything, go check it out.